Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to today's grain market blast with myself and the amazing Angie Setzer. Before we kick off, just get the legals out of the way. As usual, nothing discussed on this Spaces session constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ Global Limited, traders PIQ or PIQ Suite. And that includes the hosts, which obviously, as we know by now, is the hostess with the mostess, Mrs. Angie Setzer, and myself, Ms. Ryan Basie.
Right? You can go with
Friday, my darling.
Happy Friday. I am so glad to hear your voice today. You
Oh,
were
do you know
very
what?
missed
I was
yesterday.
I was wondering how you were going to broach this topic, but I'm glad you went the right way.
Right? It was awful to not have you here, and
Yeah,
I barely
stop
slept
it. All
last
right,
night.
this is too much now. Yeah,
All right.
today,
Happy Friday. It is getting thick in here, getting deep in here, so we might as well get started on
go, go,
what the
go.
heck is going on. As we start the day here this morning, we got wheat back up 6 cents. We've got corn kind of trading both sides of unchanged, and soybeans are doing the same thing. Really happy Friday. What are we paying attention to here today? Really, I'll start with South America and what we're seeing kind of work out there with the cash market and what that means. Soybeans are experiencing what we would call harvest pressure. You're looking at pretty aggressive selling. Like you've got farmers that are aggressively harvesting the Brazilian crop and working to sell it as they work it into the pipeline. So you are working your way through what is one of the harder times in the market that you can run into with soybeans. And even yesterday, though, we were able to kind of bounce back a bit. Most of that was coming on the back of thoughts that we will see a China trade deal. We talked about it yesterday morning. Well, I talked about it. You were there in spirit and in body, but you just couldn't hear it. But we talked about how Trump had said, yeah, it's possible we could see a China trade deal. Dean said it was possible twice, which obviously, I mean, that's really confident. He said that for one. For two, today we have Besant, who is speaking with his Chinese counterparts, kind of the first high level, you could say, conversation. So I'll be waiting to hear and see what, if anything, comes out of that. But really, when it comes down to it, I think some optimism over trade, but then we're also seeing some really interesting developments in the world vegetable oil market. You've got palm oil, and not as much the palm oil pricing per se as just pure supply. Indonesia is working to increase their blend rate up to it's 40%. They figure that'll be fully implemented here by March. There were rumors that they were going to limit palm oil exports during Ramadan. They've come out and said that's not the case. They're not going to do that, but you're going to see a continuation of pretty strong demand build in Indonesia for biofuels. Malaysia's had some production issues that have reduced their availability of palm oil. And so you've seen India basically work to wash out of some pretty large palm oil purchases that they had and probably convert their way over into maybe buying some more soybean oil. And so you're seeing some supportive things that are happening in the world vegetable oil market structure as well. It's not just China trade or whatever with soybeans, but to see them gain 14 cents in the midst of Brazilian harvest pressure and some of these other things, kind of interesting. We really need to trade. We traded up to 1049 here overnight, fell back again. We're nickel off from that. We need to get above that level, above that 1050 level in order to open the door to another leg higher. If not, we're
You
probably
got to
just
feed
going
the
to
bull.
see, yeah, you're going to see a condensed range. So if Percent comes out today and says, heck yeah, we're going to make them, phase one retroactive or whatever, even if there's no solid agreement, you could see some excitement. If we get nothing out of it or just kind of a done with the meeting, we're moving on sort of thing, you could see some selling pressure as we head into the weekend. So how do you love that for expert analysis? It could go higher, but it could also go lower.
Well, to be honest, I love it. I love it.
That's right. That's right. It might stay the same too, but that's
but
probably less
but
likely.
that's but that's
Um,
what that's what people want, right? People want to be
Right.
honest.
That's right. So moving forward, the other thing that we're paying attention to, obviously, is what is taking place between Ukraine, Trump, and Russia. We have seen, I feel like Zelensky kind of be like, okay, I'm sorry. Not even I'm sorry. I don't want to make it sound like he's, the lesser person in this sort of war of words that we've had. But you have seen the administration kind of reapproach this whole deal for the rare minerals. They'd thrown, based on what you're seeing, Basendid showed up to Kyiv last week and said, here's your deal, sign it. And Zelensky was like, what? At least that's his story. Like, I didn't expect this. And what are you talking about? We didn't get to negotiate, and so at the start of the week, he'd said that about not a serious conversation. Well, Trump did not take that kindly, and you've seen basically everyone in his administration line up and be like, do you want to do it this way, or do you want to do it the hard way? This might feel hard, but the other way is a lot harder. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's not diplomacy. It's not, we're not looking at the Obama diplomacy here, you guys. Like, that's the thing to really remember. We don't care. This administration doesn't care as much about making friends and having the West love it, and so I think you're seeing it more in the way of Ukraine probably be like, okay, we need to work with the US in order to make sure that we have a seat at the table with the negotiation, because otherwise we may not. Russia is kind of quietly, there's rumors that they're saying, hey, like, if Ukraine wants to be, whatever about their mineral rights, like, we'll allow US companies to have access to the mines or the where they think there are mineral deposits here in our captured territory. And so Russia's really playing this. It's like watching three girls, middle school girls, like, and they're playing 4D chess, and that's what you've got. Like, and I'm not like, again,
just on this.
Yes.
Obviously, just for those that aren't aware, obviously the first kind of opening salvo from Trump was, potentially like 500 billion, I think was the number used in potential in terms of rare earth deposits and stuff like that. And Trump said, we're going to take those as kind of payment for the help we've been giving you, to which Ukraine were like, well, hang on, we've not even discussed this.
Yeah, we don't even know what you're offering. Like, basically, there was no security agreement, they say.
No, exactly. But then this morning, overnight this morning, depends what time zone you're in, I guess, there was I saw some headlines going through that the US have, because there was little to no kind of structure to that kind of, that claim that Trump was making, or the White House officials were making. But this morning, they are offering Ukraine like a watered down version of this to kind of get the ball rolling. So it'd be interesting, like you said, it'd be very interesting to see, how this kind of comes about. And, it sounds like, again, it seems to be like the Trump playbook, right? You go hard early with kind of little to no detail, kind of get people kind of fired up. At least then you're getting people engaged. And then you come back with the details and, like exactly like we've seen with tariffs. Tariffs started off, we're going to do 25% on these countries. And then they get scared, they get around the table and they say, okay, well, we'll delay it for now, but and then we can have a serious conversation.
Well, and that's what Boris Johnson had said that yesterday about Trump's comments were made to shock the European, Union into action. And it worked. And so you've got people coming to DC next week from Europe that are going to be discussing what this looks like. And, honestly, China's come in and said that they are all about getting ready for peace and all this too. And so, we're really kind of looking at some really interesting geopolitical dynamics that at knee-jerk reaction is obviously like, that's bearish wheat, right? We're going to see, a bunch of grain able to flow out of both countries. It's not the grain has not stopped flowing out of either country. If you've seen a slowdown in movement here recently, it is simply because the supply is smaller than what it has been over the last few years. And so, yes, the initial thought is, oh, well, if we solve this, then that's negative to price or whatever. But in reality, it's really not going to change much overall. Though I would argue how Ukraine approaches working with the administration towards peace will, because the U.S. has to be involved in order for it to be a good move forward for both Europe and Ukraine. If they are not, then it's I think a totally different infrastructure look, and some of these other it just is more difficult, at least. So we've got to watch that. Lastly, really when it comes down to it, just kind of it's all trade. We really have to be aware of the fact that the Canada-Mexico thing could kind of come back to haunt us to a certain extent. We're 10 days away from that. That's supposed to be March 4th, I think. I thought he'd said the 1st, because then it makes it exciting over the weekend, but I could be wrong in that.
You're a glutton for punishment, aren't you?
I know. I won't even pay attention. Like, I've said that. I will tell people this, like, when I leave the office at 3:00 on Friday, like, it is in my best interest to basically just kind of shut it off over the weekend, because it doesn't do anyone any good. It doesn't do me any good anyway. But yeah, we'll be watching just to kind of see if there's any sort of conversation. You had Mexico come out and say a few different things. Their central bank was giving some forecasts yesterday that were relatively optimistic with or without the tariff concern, and some other things. I think they're really working. You've seen some reports that have shown some metrics have improved when it comes to migration across the border and some of these other things. We do have that little rift, you know what I mean, when it comes to labeling the cartels as a terrorist organization. Scheinbaum's not a big fan of that. So there is some, friction that you could say, but so it would not surprise me, especially if we're trading at higher levels of the range, if there are some concerns that come back into play over how this will work, if we do see some setbacks. But from an overall standpoint, I think really when it comes down to it, everyone's kind of accepted that the grains, at least corn and wheat, will the effects of tariffs and counter tariffs on corn and wheat will be relatively limited because the world supply remains tight. And that's about it, I think, for now. It's kind of a slow day. It's weird to say it's a slow day when you have 100 different things going on, but really all of them are in the development phase.
Yeah, the bar has been set so high over the past few weeks, right? It's like,
yeah,
unless it's all kicking off, it feels like a slow day.
That's just it. I'm like, I don't even know what to write about today. And it's like, well, you could discuss the peace deal, the weather in South America. There's a ton, but there's also not a lot. And so, exactly. My advice to farmers out there who continue to kind of beat this drum is, especially if you're sitting on wheat that you haven't priced and that you're looking at old crop wheat, especially on a basis contract or that you're paying storage on or whatever, kind of keep in mind the fact that we've rallied 70 some cents off the lower end of the market there. No, you didn't hit the high, but I am still optimistic. But remember to be engaged marketers. The same for corn, new crop and old, and then try to figure out what the heck you want to do. Beans stink. No one wants to talk about marketing beans right now. we've just been doing target orders and hoping like heck we catch the top end of the range. But otherwise, everyone have a super awesome weekend, I guess.
Yeah, exactly that. Well, as usual, as always, Angie, thank you so much for doing these. You are amazing. I am your biggest fan. And listeners,
thank you.
Oh, stop it. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, especially our regular listeners. We really appreciate you. Whatever you're doing, if you're trading today, keep it tight. If you're out in the field to doing whatever, just make sure you stay safe. And we look forward to speaking to you on Monday.
We'll be back Monday. Awesome. Have a good weekend.
Bye.